The little girl's faint breathing was growing weaker by the second, her head pressed against her father's chest as he sat in the cold waiting room, watching the fluorescent lights hum overhead. His palms were trembling, but not from fear, more from the fire building inside him. Eyes shifted toward them, curious stares lingering, whispers floating through the air, but no one stood to help. And worse, the front desk clerk had glanced at him, then back at her computer screen, deliberately ignoring the desperate pleas of a father whose voice cracked with urgency. Before we continue, if you're watching us for the first time, Elliot Stories welcomes you with a warm hug. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share the story. And please, tell us the city you're watching from. It makes us feel like you're right here with us as this story unfolds. Now, let's dive deeper. The father shifted uneasily on the hard plastic chair, rocking his daughter gently, whispering her name again and again as though each syllable could keep her awake. A bead of sweat slid down his temple, not from heat but from the sheer weight of helplessness. Nurses walked past, their eyes flicking momentarily to the child in his arms, then away, their expressions carefully blank, professional, detached. "Sir, you'll have to wait," the receptionist repeated, not even meeting his gaze. "Wait? She can't breathe properly. She's burning up. Please, I'm begging you, just get a doctor." His voice thundered across the waiting room, silencing the room for a moment. But the response was a dismissive shake of the head, the kind that told him he wasn't going to get help anytime soon. He glanced around. A young woman with a sprained wrist had been rushed in, immediately attended to. A man clutching his chest had been pulled into a room almost instantly. Yet his daughter, fragile and small, lay barely conscious, ignored as if invisible. Rage, hot and consuming, flared in his veins. The hours stretched like years. He whispered lullabies to his daughter, recalling the nights he'd once rocked her to sleep in her crib, the way she'd reach for his beard and giggle when he made silly faces. Now her little hands were limp, her lips dry. He tried again to rise and approach the counter, but one of the security guards blocked him with a curt warning. "Sir, you need to sit down and wait like everyone else." The weight of humiliation was heavier than the weight of his daughter in his arms. People around were watching, whispering, their eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and confusion. Why weren't they helping? Why wasn't someone doing something? Then something shifted. The man's face hardened, his jaw tightening as though a switch had been flipped inside him. He gently kissed his daughter's forehead, closed his eyes, and drew a deep breath. No one knew who he was, no one cared to ask. To them, he was just another desperate father with a sick child, trapped in a system that didn't see him. But what they didn't know was that this man wasn't powerless. He wasn't just another name on a patient's list. Behind the worn hoodie and tired eyes was someone who had built empires, someone who signed checks that funded companies larger than anyone in that room could imagine. And as the night stretched on and his child's condition worsened, he silently made a decision, one that would shake the walls of that hospital before the sun rose again. Yet for now, he sat quietly, waiting, like a storm biding its time. He glanced at the TV on the wall, where a news anchor was announcing economic projections and corporate shakeups in the business world. The irony was bitter. He had the power to make lives change with a single phone call, but at this very moment, in this waiting room, his voice meant nothing. His wealth, his influence, his name, none of it mattered. The receptionist laughed lightly at something on her phone. A nurse passed by, carrying coffee. His daughter whimpered weakly, and his heart cracked a little more. He pulled her closer, as though his embrace alone could shield her from neglect. The whispers grew louder. Why aren't they treating her? She looks so sick. Isn't anyone going to help? But no one moved, no one stepped forward, no one challenged the staff. And still he sat. The fire in his chest burned brighter. His eyes were steady now, not panicked anymore, but sharp, dangerous. Because what they didn't realize was that every minute of cruelty and negligence was being etched into his mind. He would not forget. He would not forgive. For them, it was just another night in the ER. For him, it was the night the line was crossed, the moment his patience shattered. What happened next would leave everyone in that hospital stunned. The night had stretched unbearably long, each second carved into the father's memory like a scar. His daughter whimpered weakly in his arms, her body so frail he felt every shiver as if it were his own. By now, his heart wasn't just breaking, it was steel, forged under fire. Finally, as dawn's pale light filtered through the blinds, a doctor walked past without so much as a glance. Something inside the father snapped. He rose from his seat, his voice no longer pleading but commanding. "Enough," he said, loud enough to silence the entire waiting room. The receptionist froze, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. The nurses who had been whispering looked up, startled. Security moved closer, but this time, the father's eyes were steady, sharp, unwavering. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. Not just any phone, but a device that unlocked worlds of influence. With a few taps, he called a number no one in that hospital would ever dream of having access to. "Activate it now," he said calmly into the receiver. Within 20 minutes, black cars rolled up outside the ER entrance. Men and women in suits stepped out, their badges gleaming under the morning sun. Hospital administrators who had been asleep at home were dragged out of bed and rushed into the building, their phones exploding with urgent calls. The room filled with tension as the identity of the man everyone had ignored became clear. The father was no ordinary man. He was the CEO of one of the largest healthcare investment firms in the country, a firm that owned a significant stake in the very hospital where his daughter had been neglected. The staff who had rolled their eyes at him the night before now stood trembling. The receptionist who had dismissed his pleas was pale, her words caught in her throat. The nurses who had walked past his suffering child tried to avert their eyes, but there was no escape. "I begged you," he said, his voice steady, but carrying the weight of thunder. "I begged you as a father, not as a CEO. And you looked at me and saw nothing worth helping." The room was silent except for the sound of his daughter's faint breathing. Administrators scrambled, ordering doctors to rush forward, but the father raised his hand. "Too late," he said coldly. "I don't want pity treatment now. I wanted compassion last night. What I see here isn't medicine. It's negligence dressed in scrubs." The weight of his words landed like hammers on the hearts of everyone in the room. Then, in front of patients, security, staff, and administrators, he made the call that would change the hospital forever. "I want every staff member on duty last night terminated immediately. Effective now." Gasps filled the room. Nurses protested, the receptionist stammered, a doctor shouted in outrage. But the suits moved quickly, handing out suspension letters, demanding security escorts. The entire ER shifted from chaos to stunned silence. Some patients clapped quietly, others watched in disbelief. The man who had been ignored, humiliated, silenced, had just wielded a power so fierce that it toppled the arrogance of an entire staff in one stroke. Finally, he turned to the administrators. "I will rebuild this ER. I will staff it with people who remember that behind every case file is a life, behind every cry is a family, behind every patient is someone's world. What I experienced last night should never happen to anyone anywhere." His daughter whimpered again, and this time, a specialist rushed forward, trembling, offering immediate care. The father hesitated, then nodded. "Dear job. Properly this time." Hours later, as his daughter rested safely, an entire hospital staff faced the reality of their choices. Some wept, some raged, but all knew one thing: they had underestimated the man in the plastic chair. And in the days that followed, news spread like wildfire. The story of the father whose cries were ignored became a national headline. Some saw it as justice, others as ruthless. But one truth echoed across the country: kindness costs nothing, yet negligence costs everything. Moral lesson: never underestimate the pain of another person. Compassion is not optional, it is the very heart of humanity. You never know who you're dealing with, and more importantly, you never know the depth of the suffering in front of you. Treat every cry for help as if it were your own. Elliot Stories encouragement. My friends, sometimes life places us in situations where people ignore our pain, dismiss our worth, or turn their faces away when we need them most. But never forget, your value is not determined by who chooses to see it. True strength lies in knowing who you are, standing firm in moments of trial, and never letting cruelty break your spirit. Hold on to your dignity, your compassion, and your fire. Because one day, the very people who doubted you will witness the strength they once ignored. Thank you for staying with us till the end. If this story touched you, please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share it with someone who needs encouragement today. This is Elliot Stories, reminding you that your story matters, your pain matters, and your victory is coming.
See you next time.